All right, so LeslieM84, thank you for being part of the community. You sent me a $10 super thanks and requested that I go into more detail about my breakdown of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I only dabbled in the, I guess it was the Metaphors of Inner Light video. But I'll let you know that there is a reason for this goofy ass shit right here to be on my bookshelf, and it doesn't belong. And sometimes it's funny because people browsing my bookshelf will come across this VHS tape. I don't have a VHS player, but this to me forever, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, belongs up here on the bookshelf right between Friedrich Nietzsche and Carl Jung. And there's a damn good reason for it. Because many of you guys have seen Fight Club, and you find out in the end that he was the same person. And he had pressed down that portion of his psyche so much that it came spilling over in the form of Tyler Durden as he began to go into his psychosis, as he couldn't handle that dark night of the soul that he was experiencing. The psychosis came up, and he created a character who essentially was him but was not him. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, what is so special, what is so beautiful about this movie, is that they don't come flat out with it and just right out tell you in the end that they were the same person. It's completely up to you to learn this by watching this movie. Some people watch the movie and they have a few laughs and they have a good time, but like a lot of movies of this type of genre, especially back then, they really knew what they were doing. You know, movies like the Marvel movies and stuff now are really good, but back in the 90s, there was hidden messages in movies like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So I keep that on my bookshelf. And here's the breakdown. Ferris Bueller doesn't necessarily exist, and Cameron doesn't necessarily exist. You get to pick which one of those characters actually objectively exists. Because the character, the protagonist in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, is you. Now, there's two sides of the psyche here. We notice in the beginning of the movie, Cameron is bedridden. He's sick. And you notice you'll never actually see Cameron's family. This is interesting. It's where we get to later. And then you show Ferris Bueller's Day... Ferris, who is faking being sick, it's because he gets up and he sees the blue sky, and he just wants to celebrate being alive. He gets the girl, he gets the grades, and no matter who's out there trying to get him, he seems to aloof, like Bugs Bunny, just always seem to overpower effortlessly through this form of wu-wei any obstacles that come his way. Whereas with Cameron, he just could stub his toe and he freaks out. Nothing goes right for Cameron. This is a metaphor for how you wake up in the morning. You notice they both are in bed in the beginning of the movie. That's how both characters wake up. It's just one character being you, and you decide when you wake up which character you're going to be. Are you going to be Ferris Bueller, or are you going to be Cameron? What you have to realize is that they're both kind of living a lie. They're both lying. Well, Cameron is lying to himself, and Ferris Bueller is lying about his persona. This is where the important drift comes to be between these two archetypal characters. Some highlights in the movie are such, right? Ferris is not meant to be caught skipping school, but he trusts the universe so much that he gets up on a parade float and then falls backwards, and then they catch him. This was not planned. I mean, it was scripted in the movie, but part of the movie, it wasn't planned. It's just a metaphor of him trusting the universe, and he was on a parade float in like Times Square or some shit like that, dancing and singing, while Cameron, looking up at this, was freaking out, saying, dude, you're going to get busted. You're going to get busted. He was literally in fear of getting busted himself because of Ferris doing something irresponsible. Yet nothing bad ever happens to Ferris Bueller. That's because he decided that. Whenever he woke up in the morning, of course, it's not correct to deceive people into thinking you're sick and whatnot, but you have to look at the agenda that drives Ferris Bueller's reason for skipping school. The fact of the matter is, that's a little hidden portion of the movie that I picked up when I was a kid. School is bullshit. It's an indoctrination system. That archetype is perfectly embodied by the principal character, the guy who is also in a rage, constantly trying to keep everything under control. The principal is running around making sure that everything is tight knit, and there's that scene where he's running trying to catch Ferris, then he walks as soon as he gets past that the classroom window, then he runs again. So he wants to appear a certain way, but he wants to freak out when the moment comes, and every time he does, it backfires on him. He tries sneaking into Ferris's house. He steps in the mud. Every time he does something to try to take down Ferris, who trusts the universe in his core, something bad happens to him. However, nothing necessarily bad ever happens to Cameron. The bad things that happen to Cameron are always self-inflicted. This is metaphorically personified perfectly by the car scene whenever it is made apparent that Cameron is very afraid of his father, whereas Ferris has a loving father. And Ferris's father says, "Wrap a hot towel around your head." And Ferris goes, "Wrap a hot towel around my head?" And it's the perfect little bit to show you that it makes a difference. How you see people is oftentimes how they see you. And Cameron being very afraid of his father, this relationship of how you see somebody being how they see you exploded. The tension of the opposites, as Carl Jung would put it, came to a climax when they tried to roll the odometer back on the car, causing it to roll off of that cliff. That's the reason the garage was up in the sky. It rolled off and the car was crushed because he couldn't unify. I can't do this with my hands right now. He couldn't unify the opposites of the polarity, that tension that was happening between him and his figmental father. That's why we don't see the father in the movie, is because it's in Cameron's head. They didn't need to embody that person as a persona because it's a psychological portion of the movie. So the car, the Ferrari rolling off, is an explosion of what happens whenever you don't unify those opposites, and then that rubber band snaps. And at the end of the movie, once that rubber band has finally snapped, because oftentimes that in the movie, of course, would represent the dark night of the soul, he gains this wisdom. He gains this kind of smile for the first time in the movie. And even though he knows he's in trouble and that Ferrari's all fucked up, he's not afraid of his father anymore. And in fact, in a way, anticipates him coming home so that he can explain the whole thing to him with a smile on his face. Thus, in that time, in that place, in that movie, becoming Ferris Bueller. That's why we don't see him again later in the movie. And then Ferris finally runs home, where we have the iconic scene. He's trying to beat his parents home. And as he's running, and the dad's driving home, the mom's driving home, the sister's onto him, the principal's outside, all these obstacles, right? He's running home to beat all these things. And then running through someone's yard, he sees two women sunbathing, and it runs past him. The camera freezes on the women, and then you see Ferris Bueller walk up. He says, "Hi, I'm Ferris. How you doing?" And that is another one of those perfect psychological moments where you have to stop and smell the flowers, no matter what kind of hurry you're in, no matter what job you're doing, no matter how big your task is, no matter how much stress you have, how many bills are coming in, or what's going on in your life at any given point, no matter how much of a rush you're in to get to your goal, you got to stop and smell the flowers every once in a while. So he stopped and talked to those girls for just a moment and made it home just in time to get in bed, where his parents, who are now personified by the characters in the beginning of the movie, kiss him on the forehead, and everything works out fine for him as the Cameron portion of his psyche has dissolved. Now, we have to remember that Ferris Bueller does not necessarily exist throughout this movie, objectively speaking, any more than Cameron does, because the movie is 100% about you. The girl in the movie is an expression of your desires, and Cameron is an expression of how you face obstacles and fears in the incorrect way when you don't trust the universe. However, Ferris's actions throughout the movie, including calling the principal under a pseudonym of a different voice, he takes on that prankster archetype in such a way that he has unified those opposites. He doesn't have a care in the world, and he trusts the universe that, like on the float, on the parade float, when he falls backwards, the universe will catch him. And he's not worried about getting caught by anybody doing anything bad. But because of that, he's a good person and he means well, but he's got mischief over here. He makes prank phone calls, right? He skips school. He sees through the bullshit, but at the same time, he never does anyone any harm either. He's got a good heart. So he doesn't lean all the way over here to where that rubber band's going to snap, and he doesn't, like Cameron, lean all the way over here where he's afraid of his father and he's worried about the relationship troubles and getting sick. He plays this prankster character, thus making that unification of opposites available to him to be able to be his true self, knowing that if he is his true self, he can pretty much do whatever he wants in life as long as he trusts the universe. And the only way you can trust the universe is if you are 100% yourself with that unification of the opposites in balance. That means to shed the mask, the persona that you might be putting on, as Cameron does oftentimes throughout the movie, and letting your true intentions come forward to those who you trust. And of course, as it would show towards the end of the movie, even if you can trust nobody else, as long as you can trust yourself to your devices, that's all you need. Because when you do your work, and you do your work honestly, as Jung put it, the others come to you. As you saw in the movie, as there was billboards put up for Cameron and people making phone calls, and everybody was out to do great things for him, a prankster. To do great things for a prankster, because what he was doing as his pranks was an art form captured in the movie. And so this rant has been brought to you by LeslieM84. Thank you for joining the community. Thank you for the $10 super thanks. Anytime somebody wants to throw down $10, that's easily on thriftbooks.com. That's a new book for me. So if you got a question or something I didn't fully envelop in a video, feel free to let me know. But that is my little breakdown for Leslie on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and I appreciate your time, guys. See ya.